So I do appreciate the opportunity to come back to really my home state. My mom was from South Dakota. So even though you see the beautiful bison colors, I still have a lot of blue and gold in me. And it wasn't an issue this year. We didn't play anyway. So it's a pleasure to be here today. I do want to first start with, and I know Dave said this, the work that we're doing at North Dakota State with virtual fencing, we're using the vent system. I'm not here promoting vents. I'm here promoting the techniques of virtual fencing. We happen to be using vents because that was the technique that was really available to us at the time. So I'm not going to promote vents. It's just that's what we're using. Wanted to say that right now. We have a lot of people working on these trials, and we've really been going for about the last 2 years. But I want to give you an update on what we're doing, or at least our experiences with virtual fencing as it relates to strip grazing, crop ground, and then we're doing some patch grazing information. So I always like to start with a good story. This worked for me. I'll be over here. Kind of fussy. A little fussy. I'll go over here. So 100 ranchers were asked what they did with their spare time. Got a few ranchers here, I'm sure. It is finicky. There we go. 90 of them didn't understand the question. 7 of them didn't know what day it was. And the rest couldn't hear well enough to answer the question. And I've been doing this for 34 years. And I've now reached that point where I'm almost 60. I'm like, well, I can't hear as well. I still move around pretty good, but I don't listen as well either. But that's a male thing, I think. So I'm going to give you an update on the virtual fencing trials that we've been doing and kind of go through our experiences. Now, I've only been doing this for about 2 years. But one thing about being at the research station, I handled a lot of the virtual fencing, putting on collars, dealing with collars, the data we collected on there. So you'll see when I get to certain areas where I got frustrated and how they worked and where they didn't work. But most of the stuff that I'm going to show you today, we did at the Central Grasslands REC, which is between Bismarck and Jamestown, south of the interstate. We're about 2.5 hours from Pierre. So I'm going to Pierre tomorrow. And so we did a number of trials on this station. And our goal at the station, I'm going to have to go over here, is really trying to increase biodiversity. So we're looking at different techniques to increase diversity across the landscape. And we felt that virtual fencing is a tool that could help us get to that point. We're also looking at enhancing livestock grazing efficiency, production, drought resiliency, and then test new technologies. One thing about the technologies today is the opportunities for grants to do precision ag work has been crazy. And so we get to do a lot more work than we used to do when we look at that. So we've been looking at rotational grazing, some modified rotational grazing, patch burn grazing, and then what I'm calling a patch grazing using virtual fencing, because we've already learned throughout the morning. One thing about being the 7th speaker, a lot of stuff's already covered. And you've all seen that they're not 100% effective. You always get some leakage or spillover within the virtual fencing. So we're looking at a patch effect more than anything else, knowing that I'm not going to have 100% effectiveness within the system. So last year, we looked at grazing to create heterogeneity on rangelands using virtual fencing. And then we looked at strip grazing cover crops on cropland. So one of them was actually, fencing them in, and then one of them was actually fencing them out. So we kind of did both techniques depending on what we did for trials. So for 2024, we got some more dollars to look at integrated virtual fencing in a livestock cropping system. So we're going to test some different techniques besides virtual fencing. Then we got some money to look at creating heterogeneity, not only at the research station, but also on BLM land and on some ranchers. So we got some money to do some work with ranchers that will pay for the systems. Got to get the ranchers who want to work with the virtual fencing. And it sounds great, right? But you've all learned today that virtual fencing takes input. It takes collaring. It takes doing this. The collaring part isn't that hard. It's getting every one of them collars ready to go on the cow. So you sit there for 2 or 3 hours in the conference room, wherever you're at, getting the collars ready. So it does take an individual who's willing to work with that time within the system. All right, so what we did is this was our tower. So we actually had a mobile tower, and I'll show you that next. That's set up at our highest point at the station. And we felt we went as far as 3 miles away. So we had this was our strip grazing trial here. This was two of our replicates of our patch grazing trial, two replicates over here. And then this was our training area. So we actually had a training area. This is Miranda's son getting ready to set the training area to teach these cows what the sound meant, and then what the shock meant, and what happened to that. And I'll show you how that goes through when we look at training these cows. You're supposed to budget 4 days to train your cows. We budgeted 5 days. So we knew when they went out that they were comfortable with what that sound meant, because really you want them to teach what the sound means. They figure out the sound early enough that they're going to get shocked. All you want to do is hit the sound and turn around. And so we spent a little extra time on that. So this is our tower. We did do a mobile tower versus a solid tower, knowing that we probably weren't at the time. We broke the warranty, but in reality, I don't know very many producers who are not going to use a mobile tower. And so we had one tower to cover the area. We bought the trailer, put the tower on. We put everything together ourselves in Fargo and at the station. And so you can see what it looked like at the top of that, our little high point at the station. And I'll show you what the costs are when we get near the end on this. So when it comes to the collaring, as a producer, and this is my herdsman, he goes, I don't want to take the time. I'm already running 400 head of cows through. Now I got to put collars on. What's the time on that? And so I'm going to skip most of this, but I did put in, on an average, it took us about 60 to 90 seconds to attach a collar to a cow. We did 100 cows. That's an hour to hour and a half longer when we set up to put the collars on the cows. So you just budget that ahead of time. I did all this stuff here, batteries in, everything done ahead of time in the conference room, so he didn't have to mess with it. So that was my evening chore to do it. It took me about 2 hours to get all my collars ready. All right. So when we trained the cows, it was about 160 acre paddock. And this paddock has a exterior fence throughout it. Cows come in through here. That's our water source right there. So when you set it up, this is the fence. This is the shock zone. This is the sound zone. And so you would turn them on, sound first, then the shock zone. And then when you get to the third day, we would put in a virtual fence without a fence in the middle, water source up here, to train them for 2 days. So then they eventually figured out, okay, now I'm getting the shock. I no longer see the fence. It's a virtual fence. And so they learned well. I thought they did a really good job, even going on pasture, in respecting that. Now, not all animals, as we found out, respect it very well, but it seemed to work really good. So I know most of you haven't covered this yet, but this is our strip grazing trial. So we had 4 different treatments, but what I want to show here is it's the auditory boundary, which is here. It's about 50 feet wide. It's a half a second sound, 1.5 second pause. So it's sound, pause, sound, pause, sound, pause. The electric boundary shock is 246 feet. There's your kilovolts. It's a half a second stimulus, 3.5 second pause. So you get a half a second, 3.5 seconds, half a second, 3.5 seconds. It repeats up to 20 times, then a 3-minute pause. So the animals aren't always being shocked. There's got to be some kind of safety behind this. If an animal remains in a stimulus boundary, the cycle will repeat for 4 cycles. That's a long time. Then the collar will be disabled and the cues will stop until the collar is reset. So there's safety modes even within the shocking period. Let's say a cow fell over, broke her leg, and she's stuck in there. Eventually, it's going to quit.
Can you tell them how, in the system, how it changes colors, that the color needs to be reset?
I have some pictures of that. Okay. Yeah. I'll show you that. So that kind of shows you how they work. I was going to go back here. I probably can't now. So this is, holy cow. Did you see that? If I talk that fast, we could get the break a lot quicker. It might go through.
Do you want me to put you back?
Put me back to,
Okay.
where's the strip grazing one? Right there.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can get it there. So this is an example. You can see the cows. We also hit a button to get number of head of cows. You can see there's the air in there. This cow's actually in the fence. But we just, I think as I'm pushing this button, it's actually moving. or not. This is technology at its best. What did I do? Just do from here too.
I think it's Matic.
Yeah. If I just hit down here, it'll go right.
Yeah, here.
Okay. 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 So the next slide I actually did put a video in here that you can hear the sound of the beeps. So we'll see if it shows up where listen, comes up pretty good. What'd you push down? Do you hear that? So imagine hearing beeping. The one thing, so it's virtual. It's truly virtual. So the fence line is right here. And you can see these cows were actually, we designed this system to get heavy use, full use, moderate use, and rest within our patch. These cows are currently in the heavy use early in the season. And so you can see these cows respected that really well. There's hardly any use here. The calves are not collars we talked about this morning, so they have free roam. And as you get later in the season, the calves will roam farther and farther away from them cows. Our thought was also that we'd get a creep grazing effect. If the cows can get ahead of if the calves get ahead, they'll have this to graze on, and they do. There's times when I'd see calves shoot a quarter mile away from the cow. But they always figure it out. They always come back. And so we thought we might see a creep. We didn't see it in this example, but a creep grazing effect. So that was supposed to be the sound. This is the one in Fargo, and we had about a 6 mile range and the station in Fargo. I think we were closer to about 8 miles at Streeter. So this is that border we talked about. And I went back one, but actually you can just see the difference in fence line contrast. And it was cool. This was during our field day. And so we sat out in the field day and the people would just walk out there. It's funny. Some producers would walk out there and they'd get to the line, they'd stop. And they'd go, well, I get shocked. I'm like, no, unless you want to wear this collar. so you won't get shocked when you walk out there. But it was a really nice line that for the most part, these cows respected that line. We got our use that we were shooting for. So this is taking the data that we get from the outputs. Now I just got an email about a half hour ago that they're going to quit giving us this data. Yeah, isn't that nice? So we wanted sound data, we wanted shock data to kind of get an idea of what we call spillover, how many animals or what percent of the time the animals get out. So we have 4 different replicates. Everything we do, they're replicated. So the blue line is one replicate, yellow is another replicate. But one thing you'll notice, if you just look at the light blue color, this is the light blue color. This is the cows in that pasture. They rarely ever got shocked. They were really good specimens. This group was not. On this one day, on July 18th, which is my birthday, we had 500 shocks on 100 cows that one day. Can you imagine? On an average, that's 5 per day. My guess is there's one that was just going to town, just getting shocked. And so we had lots of variability in the animals. We also have one of our groups is going to be a young group of cattle. The other 3 are going to be mature groups of cattle. So I'm guessing that might be a function of age as well as they move around more. But you can see we had 24,589 total shocks. We had about 60,000 total sound bites. We had 2,046 what we call breakouts, where we knew they broke out of the zone, which came to 8.3% spillover. I don't know if that's 1 animal, 2 animals, 3 animals. We can get that data. I just got this. What is today? Thursday? I got this Tuesday night. So you get what I got figured out for today. But we always heard about 10%. We ran about 8.3% spillover, not knowing if it's 1 or 5 cows. One thing I was happy with, though, when a cow got out, she almost always came back. They always come back to the herd. If they're out over there, they're going to come back. The issue is half of them get out. Now they're debating what half do you want to go to. We rarely ever had that. Those always 1 or 2 animals, and they always came back to the herd. All right, so this was we wanted to look at this heterogeneity, or did we actually get a rotational effect within this design? And so this one here this is boars. I know if you're in the Forest Service lands, you hate the word visual obstruction reading. Ignore that today. It was our tool to get use on the pasture. So entire means they started there. This would be the pasture. We open this fence up. Now it's over here. Now they got these two. Then we close that off, open this fence up here. Now they have all three. And this one here is left rested per se. So this would be grazed all year, half the year, 3/4 of the year, or half the year, 1/4 of the year, and rested. And you can see the difference in structure. We got heterogeneity in terms of our grazing patterns. So we know it worked in terms of changing their behavior using the virtual fence. That's really all we wanted to look at for the first year. So then we look at livestock performance. Most producers want to know how they perform. So this is virtual, this is pounds per day gain. This is the virtual fence. We also look at patch burn grazing, which is this one, so that's fire. This is our modified twice over rotation, and this is season long grazing. Our best pastures for calves last year was patch burn grazing and season long. Virtual fencing was second, and my modified twice over was last. That's that way every year. When I push a rotation system, which that does, performance will always go down. We didn't see a creep grazing effect on those calves in the first year. I know there's kids in here. We had really poor performance last year in our calves. Most producers did last year, at least in North Dakota, because of how the weather was and the winter was before. So if you look, yeah. I haven't, no, I'm going to guess not, but I haven't run the stats yet. I just got these done also Tuesday night. And if I'd have made it more zero to that, it looked a lot tighter. But based on the data, I'm going to guess no. And then same with the cow data. You're a typical scientist. Every rancher here doesn't care, but you're right. Are they statistics?
Because, you know, whether it's virtual fence or patch burn, I mean, like obviously having the.
I should at least put error bars in. Yeah, right. But when I run the analysis, I'm sure they'll be not different. This was cow data. So this is the virtual fence. Season long virtual fence were almost identical at 1.17 pounds a day gain. Patch burn grazing was our best, and that typically is always our best. These two might be statistically different. That'd be about it on this data set. So if you're a rancher, I know we're talking virtual fence. You see that data, does that surprise you? These are mature cows, by the way. First calf heifers to mature cows, gaining 1.16 pound a day gain. Cows don't do that normally. Usually gain about a half pound a day on a good year. That's a crazy amount of performance. Our winter last year was awful. Josh, right? Our cows came on pasture, the smallest they've ever been, most stressed they ever were. They put their energy back to that cow, and our calf paid for it last year, which is independent of treatment effect here. But I was just shocked when I saw this data, what these cows did last year to make up for the drought year, or the hard winter we had. But again, you can see our virtual fence. This doesn't surprise me here. And patch burn typically always is higher performance. All right, so then we looked at the virtual fencing with the cover crop trial. And so what we did here is we used 3 different techniques of strip grazing. One of them is the virtual fence. The other one is the auto gate system. I'll show you a picture of the auto gate system. I think it was developed out of Nebraska, Mitch. Is that right? Pretty sure someone in Nebraska, because it sure wouldn't be a Dakotan to design this thing that doesn't work very good. But I'll show you the auto gate system. And what it is basically you put in a poly wire with a gate. It's set on a timer, and it's set to open up on a given day. Sounds great in theory, but it only has Saturday through Sunday. So if you want to rotate on day 10, you can't set up till day 3. That's one of the issues. We also looked at traditional poly wire and then continuous grazing. And I got some data on here. You can at least watch the time-lapse video on here. So this again looked at spillover effect. We had 624 shocks. We had 48 breakouts. So we're about 7.7%. Again, give or take 8% spillover on some of the other trial we had in there. We had I'm trying to think that's just animal number 2. But this is what it basically was, is this is where the first fence was at. Strip grazed here, then go to here, then go to here, then open it up on the back end. Our smallest pastures on the virtual fence would have been about 2 acres in size. So we run about 10 to 12 head on that 2 acres, and we had no problem with it at all. We actually saw more spillover late than early. So if we look at, I'm going to show you this time lapse of So the fence right here, this is the auto gate system right here. This is the virtual fence here. That one there that one there is the auto gate, and the top one is continuous grazing. So you can see the cows are moving farther on the top one. They still never go all the way to the end early in the season. They're still staying where those cows are at, that herding effect. But you can see these cows basically respected that really well to start with. Hardly any escapes on the first 11 days. Then we move the fence. So here's your strip grazing fence here. We actually had one get out here, looks like. Again, worked really good. Cows stayed in there. You can see the continuous graze is still mainly up there, and the auto gate's over there. Then we opened up the third one. Now I got some spillover here, a lot more spillover in the back end, and I don't know why we got more spillover on this on the ending of it. I'm guessing is because this here got pretty short. So they're moving their way here. And you can watch the continuous grazing now. You'll see the continuous grazing, they move down a lot more to the end. The end's right here. So we're getting more movement to the back side. So you can watch these animals move. And one thing I see, there's one popping up here. That cow never got out. That's just an error in the system. Then we opened it up for the last one, and they got free range in the last 11 days. And then we wanted to look at grazing efficiency and then livestock performance. So the first set of data here, this is actually the virtual fence. And you can see that nice line. We had snow, which really popped it out nice. You can see they respected that virtual fence really well on this trial. This would have been actually the second move where we had some snow. So we looked at degree of use, and my goal was to graze them all the same. That way I can look at livestock performance. We had about 76 to 78% degree of disappearance, all 4 treatments. So I did a really nice job of figuring out my carrying capacity, and we hit it basically spot on. Kind of got lucky there. So you look at livestock performance. This is virtual fence. These are now heifers. We're at 0.91 pounds on the virtual fence, 0.95 on the poly. Our auto gate did the worst. They did not want to go through that last poly line. When they got to the end, that gate was like, they're going through, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm done. And then the control was right about in the middle at 0.63. So I was happy to see the virtual fence did very well. I was surprised my poly wire did as well as they did, because they never really escaped that for the most part, but performance actually looked pretty good on the system. All right, so this is the auto gate system, and you can see it's basically, here's your timer right here. Whenever you set your timer, then it just basically it spins and opens up the gate. And the cows, I was surprised the cows did not tear the fence down at all. They go through the gate and they come back out. So they really did a nice job. I think where that has the most value actually is in larger pastures where you want to set up pastures to move within the system. You can set it up on a time. You can open up a gate without having to go out there. You still want to check your cows, but I think it has some value that way. In small scale, like strip grazing, 1 to 2 day moves, I don't like it. It's too much work. I'd sooner do my poly wire. It's just much quicker to pop a poly wire, make your steps, hook it up. For this, you got to hook up the poly wire, make your steps, hook it up to this line, then put this one in place with an anchor, pull your gate across, set your timer. It took me 20 minutes to do the auto gate. It took me 5 minutes to do the poly wire, and I walked about a quarter mile. So it's just a lot easier. So I'm not really. We're going to test that for 3 more years, and I'm already knocking it. That's not a good thing. So anyway, that's your livestock performance. And so when I look at my major concerns on the virtual fencing, one is costs, and I know this morning we saw some pretty good data on cost, and I think the value is going to be there in terms of the cost down the road. Collars that fall off, man, they made me mad because it was me looking for these collars. And then battery life. So I'm going to show you here. In terms of our costs, we spent $10,000 in the tower, and I know I can't remember his name. Logan was talking 15 years. I was thinking more 10 years in terms of length of it, and I don't know. It's a guess. We spent $3,500 for that trailer. Our collars for this year are $45 a unit per year. Batteries are $10 a unit. Supposed to last 6 months. It really depends. I think some are actually going dead by 4 months. Some are still going good at 6 months. It just varied on the size of the pasture we're in. So usually usually researchers get a break on stuff. Not us. Our collars cost us last year $100 a collar. And I'm like, really? I spent $10,000 on collars. Then they go, well, this year we'll give you the normal rate. I think it was just because I was at NDSU. Really? Yeah. Yeah. So that's our cost for 2024. And then of course the computer system software is all free. I like the services we got, but if they're going to take away all these little services on data for shock zones or for the beeping zones, that's going to hurt in terms of getting some data for us down the road. For a producer, it probably doesn't really matter, but you still get everything else. But that data becomes some value for us. That's our cost. My biggest thing was lost collars. So this is the one that we passed around with this cable. And I think the cable is sitting back there. I didn't mind the cable. The issue with the cable for us was because we have potholes, when they get in the water, they get corroded and they fall off. And that's where we saw most of our issues. So we had 100 cows collared, 9 fell off. So we were at 90% on. That sounds like today. I was actually a little bit annoyed by it, but it sounded like it was a pretty good number. The problem was this corrosion. So, but us, as scientists, we're like, well, let's try something better. Maybe we can do something better. Remember, I'm from North Dakota. I keep knocking myself, and I shouldn't do that. So we decided to go with like a little swivel. If you think about a halter, on a halter chain, you hook it up on a halter and you get that swivel, easy to put on. We thought that would be better. Well, we were wrong. When they rub this thing against anything, it pops off. So I looked for more collars on that one. So we actually had 40 collared. We reused the cow collars, put them on the heifer collars. So reusing them is a great way to multiple uses the collars. We had 11 fall off, so we were at 27.5% lost. Cows rubbing the posts, clips open up. It was not a good idea. So next year we're either going to go with Jamie's idea, or we're looking at using like a loop system that you screw shut, and hoping that'll keep it a little bit tighter. So when we look at overall, we had 20 collars fall off. We found 14. So I had this brainy idea. We had a bunch of kids come out. We gave them the side-by-sides and the 4x4s, and we went geocaching. So I gave them the GPS coordinates and said, have fun. And I said, I'll give you $10 a collar. There was 14 collars out there. They came back with 4. That was it. I was disappointed because I found more than that myself. And so in the end, we found 14 of the 20. And you can see the picture there. If they're sitting like that, you can find them. But when they're in grass like that, or if they're in buckbrush, it just gets to be pain. And I didn't realize, I thought I had to pay for these. So I'm like, I'm out there like 2 weeks ago looking for collars. So I'm thinking, I don't want to pay them money for these collars. I'm a German. I'm cheap, So I was trying to find these collars. Well, there's 6 of them we haven't found. So we'll maybe look for them next year. So the issue here really is labor behind it. If you're going to go look for these collars, it's the time. And we don't have time to go look for collars. So when we did look for collars, we got the GPS coordinates. You can see in the picture here, it gives you the collar number, the cow ID. We can figure out where they're at, send them out. Well, the air on them is at least 20 to 30 feet. And so if they're in buckbrush, it wasn't easy. I had better luck with maps. So if you've seen this map, there's actually 4 cows shown here. Here's one here, one here, one here, and one here. The black cows are actually collars that have fallen off. The red ones are the dead batteries. So those are collars that had died, and they're not actually no longer there. Is that what you wanted me to show? Okay. So ours show up red. Of course, yours show up red as well. So I go out in the maps, and that's how I found the ones I found. And then this just shows the same in the strip grazing. There's those 2 there are actually dead batteries. What happened was we took the collars off the cows, put them on the heifers, had batteries in them. I'm like, well, which one should you replace? I had like 20 extra batteries. So I replaced half of them. The other half, that's what I had for problems. So you can see where it looks. At least in here, these are small enough I can get between a fence and I can go walk and look for the collars. I still haven't found this one because it's buried in snow, and I can't find that one. And I spent an hour on that collar, and I'm like, they're paying me $20 an hour to do this. Maybe it's 10, maybe less than that. But either way, it was just not very efficient in this time. All right, so we look at efficacy of the virtual fencing. To me, in grazing management, this does not concern me. As long as I have a border fence up, I really don't care if we have 10% spillover. because they tend, especially with cows, they always come back. And so it just doesn't bother me to get that. And if I can put in a virtual fence and not build new fence, man, I'm all for the virtual fence in that scenario, as long as you got a good border fence. So that's what I really look at. I think this creep grazing effect on the calves, we're going to test that a little better in the next few years. I do think we should get a creep grazing effect. I don't know. We didn't see it this year, of course, but we just had a poor year. So spillover cows tend to come back, as we've already talked about. I can't imagine where Dave's at, and I've worked with sheep a long time, and when they get in that spot and they start coming out, I think they all go. It's either all or none with sheep. Where cattle, you got a couple pushers and they tend to come back. I think where the areas where you got to be concerned about is if you have a highway, you got buildings, you need something that you really can't have cows out on. This is not going to work. There's just too much risk and liability in those scenarios. So that's just something to think about. And we all know that now. We all figured that out by today. If I have a highway, even a gravel road that's being busy, I got to have a border fence there of some sort. I believe so. In summary, the precision ag technology for grazing, I think will become a common in the future. And I sat in a meeting with UNL. It was Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota. Might have even been well, it wasn't Montana. They're not ahead of the game yet. But anyway, we met, and one of the UNL person said, "I think this technology is 10 years out." And I said, "No, it's not 10 years out. I think this technology will get better astronomically every year for the next 5 years. And if it's not commonly used in the next 5 years, I'd be shocked. It's not 10 years. I think it's more closer to 5. And I think we're going to see more and more agencies. I know NRCS doesn't fund this yet. I think it's going to be even in the EQIP program down the road. I'll see dollars move towards this for interior fences, because they already pay for interior fences with virtual fencing. I just think it's going to be there, and it's going to be within 5 years, is my opinion. I could be wrong, but normally I'm not, but I shouldn't say that. Technology has become more affordable. I think it'll become more affordable. I do think that most stuff's going to have to eventually go to satellite versus towers. So you got more, so you're going to get stuff in those ravines where you're always getting readings to get the impact of the virtual fence. Solar is probably going to be a better movement. Now, I know we talked about tags. So someone asked about tags. Can we go with a tag? How many here are ranchers? Raise your hand. How many holes do you put in an ear before she's 5 years of age? So as you add these, now 701X currently has a tag that you can put in the ear that will give you GPS, it'll give you herd management, give you some behavior. These are $45 a month, a year. 701X are $82 to buy the collar, to buy that little chip. And it's $42 a year to get the data for maintenance. It's $124 the first year, then $42 after that. We're paying $45 here now. I think that technology, that needs to get really much cheaper. If we're going to use technology in the ear, it's got to get even more cheaper. And my herdman tells me, I'm not putting another hole in that damn cow's ear, because you got so many ears, and if they get too heavy, you got droopy ears. I know when we sell calves at sale barn, you get knocked for droopy ears, right? But we'll probably get into a cow eventually. I hope not. But it's just something to think about with the technology. I think technology will keep getting better. Even with these, we'll get smaller and smaller and much more user-friendly. And I would think they're going to get cheaper. And I would suspect that the towers, I do like the tower. I don't mind the tower, especially when you can make it mobile. But I would guess the towers will probably go away down the road. It'll be more tied to the collar or the ear or whatever it is. So the costs have to come down. I do think labor today, how's about doing for time? I'm good. I got 5 minutes. Labor today has been for about the last 10 years is limited. We don't have the labor or the power to do this. And I think the labor itself has tremendous value that you're going to see in virtual fencing. And I think that will continue to outweigh even the expenses. So we talked about vents today, and who bought out vents? Who bought into vents? Merck. Why did Merck buy into vents? It's money, but why did they do it? What's the money? To make money. What? They're going to take that collar and add behavior, herd health. They can get estrus cycling in there. They can get other types of technology out of that collar. Now, I know Gallagher's probably going to do the same thing eventually. That's going to add value to a rancher and his or her operation. And so I think then the cost that you'll get will be much more affordable when you look at it. So it's just kind of cool. And we talked about the phone. I had that phone. 97, I had a phone. And it was this big. That's the whole land. You could. But you know what? I love that phone. It could go anywhere. It could go anywhere. You know, and it worked. You know, so the technologies just keep getting better. So I think this, in terms of this technology on estrus cycling, sick animals, and so on, it's going to be well worth your costs within that. So that's my last slide. I'm going to quit in time, and so I can take some questions.
To add one more thing, so you know how Kevin, when you go, this is for vets, when you go into the system, all your little black cows show up, see where they are. They change colors depending on the status of the color, right? So like they turn red, the battery's dead. But you know how Kevin, and I should add this to my presentation, but you know, brought up how the auditory and the shock sequence, and how after 4 cycles of the shock, the whole thing like shuts off, because it's, again, from the company's standpoint and animal welfare perspective, you have to go into the vet system. Those animals then like turn yellow.
Yep.
Right click to select all of them at once, but you have to basically right click on all the yellow animals and recharge the colors, because they get more or less like turned off when the shock keeps going. So just another, you know, when you're thinking about like the actual management implications of it, things that like you are going to have to do that you don't have to do today.
And I will say that technology, since I'm about 60, as we get older, we don't want to do new technology. I mean, I don't want to do it. I mean, I do it. I have people. I do have people. I have younger people. And when I have stuff that I need issue technology, I call my son. And I call whoever it is. And I know as we get older, or the elder generation, we struggle with the technology. And I do myself. But that's just the way I think, and I think most companies know that, and they'll make it as user-friendly as they can so that even the 60-year-old person like myself can do the technology. But not everybody's going to do it. That's why you have multiple generations. A lot of times we have multiple generations in our family. And someone in your family is good at one thing, and someone's good. That's a team. We all do teams. That's the same idea. So I think a lot of the technology is going to take a team effect within your family or your operation to become more effective, because someone's going to love doing this or this or this. Yes, sir. Yeah, I thought about even myself, if we put like a beeper in there, like just a nice red beeper so I can go look for it at night. But look at the battery life that beeper would take on there. But the color.
Yeah, I've been told the notepad system, you can actually ping it.
Oh, yeah.
Play it
Like in Norwegian lullaby.
Really?
so you can pop it like
or
you can see it.
Right, yeah. And I think they'll keep fixing that too, because in the end, if you lost half your callers, if it's vents in this scenario, they can't afford to give you 50 more callers.
Jim, about the color, at least in some of the conversations that we've had with vets, it's been like you guys like literally need to break each like right? They are not. They told us that they're not making them that way with like the plastic hard color from like a public perception standpoint. Because if you think about it, like the idea, right, for different interest groups, if you're like stock animals, cattle, right, and that's happening, you don't want like the general public to like more visibly see that with like a really nice, you know, bedazzled collar, right? So their standpoint, Vince kind of told us that they didn't want to draw attention to the fact that the collar even
So
Yes, sir.
mine have a lot of timber, down timber, breakfast, and colors get fall off in. And I accidentally stumbled onto it by putting the fence boundary over the top of the drop collar. I can hear it beeping.
Oh,
It's like, oh. So now when I have those I can't find, I'll move that collar to the drop collar hurt. And I'll put a little exclusion or inclusion over that collar, because the GPS is going to ping in a little different spot every time. So it feels
Right.
like the collar is moving. So I'll set it activate 10 o'clock at 10:30. I'll just trip it up through there and all of a sudden.
oh. See, ranchers are smart. They figured that out. They're from California, right?
That's why these guys think you're so good. We all can share.
We all can share it. And I think most of the stuff they learn have, not most, from all, have come from the rancher. What they've learned when it's applied. So I'm going to quit because my time's up. But I'll be here all day. So if you have any questions, you can sure grab me.
So our next activity, we're gonna pass around a collar to randomly shock whoever's holding it.
No. So there's a story behind that. I should tell you, there's a grad student from Nebraska that did that. He wanted to see how it hurts. So he put it on his side. And he walked into it, beep, 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 shock, shock, shock. He got off and took it off his leg that quick. That much it really hurt.